Hi everyone, it is Mickey here from A Pretty Talent and the Waterwell Ministries. And yes, I'm back with the second installment of the Art Journaling course lesson 3. So I wanted to quickly start on this because this is now the next day. And this has had time to dry. And I think it has done the glue has done a pretty good job. Everything seems to be glued together and intact. I may bring some tape in, but I'm going to just see how the structure of the book holds up. And if it's not necessary, then I'm not going to use tape if it's not necessary. If I do use tape, I think I'm going to just go with a clear packing tape, a wide packing tape strip that I'm going to put over here. I doubt it will be necessary on this end. I am a little concerned by the fact that my sticker has become obliterated. But everyone knows that says I walk by faith, not by sight, so sometimes we shouldn't make too much of something. Okay, in any case, that's as far as that's concerned. Now, I want to talk a little bit more today about line work. I'm going to start with line work. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to pull out this one. And I want to pull out, let me pull out both of these. Okay. And let me just quickly talk about, I'm going to put the book aside. There. It's not on my cables. I'm going to open this page here. And I'm going to show you how lines can be used to portray emotions. So just that curved line in the right space makes a figure appear aggressive. These downward pulling lines indicate exhaustion or grief, being miserable. I'm just looking for all the downward pointing ones. Guilty. Are there more of these downward lines? There's anxious and apologetic. The same kind of thing. Oh, yes, disappointed as well. Agonized, but you will see that now they've been placed in different places. Now, upward pointing lines are going to be confident. Where are some more upward pointing ones? Blissful, interested, thoughtful even, satisfied, and just the curvature of the line then can portray emotion, and that's what I'm going to, and I was just looking at a couple of lines. I'm not even going to the shapes, and the shape, how the shapes change on the eyes and the mouth and so forth. So there's that. Then, if we take this little information booklet or page on lines, there are way more lines than these, but I want you to start thinking differently about a line. A line is not just a line, as we see on this cutting board. Lines are obviously vertical, they're horizontal, they're diagonal. Here we have the vertical, the horizontal, the diagonal. But they're also swirly lines. They are curved lines, as we've just seen here. They can be wavy lines. Let me see if we've got some wavy lines on this one. I did see some, yeah. For the cold, there's a wavy line. Well, wavy lines all over. There were more. This love struck is a slightly wavy line, but it is a wavy line. Paranoid, the wavy line. And well, you can see that for yourselves. Right. Scalloped lines, dotted lines. Now, a series of dots can form a line. A series of, let me get a pencil here. And I did remember to bring my drawing book. I'm feeling so proud of myself for remembering. A series of any shape can form a line. And you can follow this line. And we all know this line starts here and goes in that direction because of the shape that I have chosen to make. Now the same with a series of circles or dots. But here it is not necessarily going to be clear what direction the dots follow, unless I do something like this, where I have used two techniques here. I have used size, because the closer we are to something, the larger it appears to be. But I've also used the pressure of my hand, working from dark to light, because the further away something is from us, the smaller it appears in the first place, but also the dimmer it grows, the lighter the shading is going to be. And so this dotted line has a clear direction, whereas this one does not. You can follow the line, but you can follow it from either end. Right, dashed lines, pretty much the same thing as what I've been talking about. Loop lines, zigzag lines, and then hatching and cross hatching is literally, this would be called hatching, and cross hatching is just going to cross that. Just very interestingly, cross hatching can cross in more than one direction as well. It doesn't have to be only two directional. Sometimes that's not said. So anyways, hatching and cross hatching. And those are the lines that they've got on this one, and it's a very interesting one. This side of the page goes into doodling, but makes use of lines and shapes, combination of the two, to create these doodles. And it's a very, very fine reference point. If you're sort of getting stuck on where to go next, how to create a certain texture or whatever it is, this is very useful. So this is going to give you, this is a scalloped line, but it's going to give you that fish scale texture. This same line, this exact line, right? If I put this close together, I can start creating the impression of knitting, pretty much as they've done here. I need a little bit more there, but I need that. So it's going to be a combination of lines. Okay, why am I developing it? I don't know. But you can see how you can create certain textures and things just by looking at these examples here. So that's why this one is included. Now, when we start combining lines, circular lines with horizontal lines here, then we start creating patterns. Here are your zigzag type lines combined with horizontal and vertical lines to create patterns. And you can go on infinitely with creating patterns. But what is important then is this word, repetition. After that, when we start adding colors, we have repetition. Okay, we have repetition here, and those are starting to create patterns. You can see there's a pattern emerging from, let's take the easiest one. It's a circle and a line and a circle and a line and a circle and a line and a circle and a line, and that's the pattern. And each of these will have patterns. So you've got a rather large, let's call this a triangle, on a thin square, smaller triangle on a larger square, smaller triangle still on a still larger square, and then the pattern returns to the large square, large triangle, sorry, on the, this time a slightly larger triangle than on that side. And then this is the point where the pattern is going to start repeating, I assume, because it sort of breaks up a little early. There is in any case a pattern, whether this pattern varies completely, because I'm looking at this one and it's not the same size as this. So there seems to be a variation in a pattern that I'm, well, I've got too small a piece of this to really see where it's going. What we have is in any case a pattern, because we've got a triangle and on top of squares in each case. Then we've got these lines seemingly running through. Here we've got a break, but because we don't see enough of the pattern, we don't actually know where that break is going. And that same pattern is repeating here, of triangles and squares and lines. So that repetition creates the pattern. When we add color to it, we keep the same principles of repetition to repeat colors, the oranges, the pinks, the blues. Now there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So immediately there is a pattern repeated. In this time, all 3 colors are repeated 4 times, and don't miss the black, which is something else that repeats, the holes, the dead space. Another thing that repeats here that one shouldn't miss is the use of the white. If this was used only once or twice, it would look awkward. The fact that it's used in all the shapes, frankly, is the success story of the pattern, of the repetition. Okay, so here, this pattern, you can see the lined purple. Okay, so I had a bit of a surprise waiting for me, because apparently a phone call had disrupted the recording of the video, and so I had finished recording the whole video, and when I checked it, it had only recorded up to a certain point. So let me try and pick it up from there. I have gone and made myself a cup of coffee. It's standing here on the side, just to pick it up again and just redo what I've just done. So I was talking about pattern and repetition. So here you have repetition of the purples, 2 with lines and 2 with dots. You've got the reds, pretty much the same thing, but on opposite ends. And the green shapes with what appears to be kind of smiley faces with smiles and eyes. I don't know if that's my interpretation. But what is interesting about this is the contrast, because contrast has created focal points here. Now, in this instance, your black in the background remains in the background because it is left black. In this instance, the white has been placed in the black, inside the black. And when you have your sharpest contrast, your lightest light against your darkest dark, then that becomes a focal point. But the way the lines are structured, it shifts the focus from the black and white contrast to the green. Everything points at the green. So you have a color focal point and a line focal point, and those two are not necessarily the same, but in this case they work towards the same goal. Okay, in this bottom one, you have curved lines. One curves this direction and the other curves in the opposite direction, with these diagonal lines starting from the center point and going outwards. Now, what has been created by these lines, by the use of these lines, is called movement in the rhythm. So you can literally, even though this is a stagnant 2D drawing, you can literally see the movement. This looks like a piece of cloth that is just weaving in and out, waving in and out rather. And that wavy movement of the cloth. And that's an illusion of movement that's been created, and a rhythmic movement that's been created because there's a repetition of pattern. And that all is the magic of lines, and how you can create all of that with lines. Now I have then gone on to talk at length about lines, creating these 2 pages, but anyways, let's quickly recap what I have said, and I am going to use this as an example. So I have used a light pencil here to create a smiley face, and then I've used a darker pencil here to create the same smiley face, and the lighter one seems happier, because the tonal value, the lighter tonal value, creates an illusion of happiness. I then did the same thing, and I created 2 angry faces, one in a lighter pencil and one in a darker pencil, and the darker one seems angrier because a darker shade portrays the emotion of anger. So the mood in your drawing is in your control, it's under your control. You can determine the mood in a drawing by simply understanding tonal value and how to apply tonal value. I then created these 2 circles, both of them shaded the same and with the same pencil. And then I used a white pen to add light to the one. And then used an eraser to add light to the other one as well. I'm going to quickly create a 3rd one here without any light at all. I'm just going to shade it. Now when I say without any light, that's not entirely true, because the eye will actually still be able to pick up the patches of light in there. But you can see that this dark circle with no light added is going to appear unfriendlier, darker, moodier than the 2 that has light added to it. And again, it's all under your control. Now, what else did I want to tell you? That your control, let's talk about the word control, that sometimes you want to give up control. And you will see that I've switched to another stand now, so that I hope you can see better what it is that I'm creating. I think it is a better view. But so when I hold my pencil at the back, I am going to lose control, and I'm willfully losing control. And that's something that one has to learn in art, that there are going to be times where you do not want to draw the controlled line, even if it's a light line. You want to surrender some control, because you're going to get more movement in an uncontrolled line. It's going to be a more natural line than a controlled line. If I want to control a line completely, can you see how lifeless that line is by compared to, well, any of these others, where I have to certain degrees surrendered control. That surrendering of control is a rather important one. There are times where you need to exercise control. Let's say I want to add a cluster of hair. I want to certainly exercise control at where this starts. I relinquish control towards the ends. Because if hair has the same width from beginning to end, it's not hair. Starting point control, ending point relinquishing control. That's the a rule to successful art is that relinquishing of control. I did talk about this now, the darker lines that are more aggressive and on the foreground, and lighter lines that are friendlier and on the background. And though these lines are all drawn right next to each other, same height and everything, our perception will always be that these are further back than these, simply because of the tonal value of the lines. Now, I then talked about shading, and I'm actually going to do this somewhere else now. I was going to do this off camera, but seeing as I had that mishap now, I am going to do it on camera in my book here. I am wondering, okay, let me do this. I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 circles. And I'm going to label this. I don't want to use that pen to write with. That's a pencil. It's a very soft pencil. I'm going to use my 2H pencil, and I'm going to write the word shading here. And the types of shading that we are going to be looking at is number 1, hatching. And you will see why I number them just now. Number 2, cross hatching. Number 3, circular shading. Number 4, circular and stump. I will explain all of these. Number 5 is going to be 4 and 2. So the circular and the stump with the cross hatching. And number 6 is going to be stippling. I'm going to put in brackets stump because there's just a little something extra that I want to show you with that. Okay, so these are the 6 shading methods that I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to switch back to my 6B pencil and just take a sip of coffee first. I actually just finished the coffee because it was cooling down already. So the first thing that you want to do is decide where your light source is, and that area where your light source is, you are going to leave that blank. Now let me quickly talk about this. We have put these drawing papers, these offcuts from the drawing papers, right in our books. And though my initial lesson was off the book, I did at the end of that video say that I was going to do this off camera in the book because I think this is nice to have in the book. But I know that when I'm talking and teaching, then I go off script and I start scribbling all over, and that's why I thought it was a good idea to do it in a separate book and then do the cleaned up version here. But okay, let me quickly do this. So I'm going to decide that my light source is going to be somewhere on this end coming in. And I'm going to start drawing lines, just lines. That's what hatching is. Just drawing lines for where the shaded areas are going to be. And then once I have those lines in place, I can go back, and where I want the darker areas to be, I can do more lines. And considering the size of these circles, maybe this was not the best pencil, because it's it's got a very thick point, and it kind of fills in really, really quickly. Well, that will help with the speed of the video, but in any case, yes. So I can keep developing that, but in essence, that's going to be what hatching is going to do. Just those lines. My lines don't always have to be the same length. So if I now come in with shorter lines, kind of staccato kind of lines, it's because I want darker areas there, but not necessarily to the center. Now, cross hatching is pretty much the same thing. It's drawing those same lines that we've just had. There's another one. I'll just do that one on there. Another method of shading. Okay, so this is my hatching still. This is just hatching. When I come in with cross hatching, I'm going to go in the opposite direction. Just lines still, but now going in the opposite direction. But I don't have to stick with just the two directions. So when I want, where I want the really darkest shades, I can come in with even more directional cross hatching. And I can keep building it up like that. This is a little bit. I just want to return to the circular shape. Okay, but that's going to be cross hatching. Now, when I do a circular pattern, I am literally filling in my shaded areas with a circular pattern. And a circular pattern is going to be softer. It is by default always going to be softer than lines. And that's something to bear in mind when we talk about texture. So if you're looking for a softer texture, then use circular lines. If you're looking for a harder texture, you might sort of steer clear of the circular lines. Now again, where I want the darker shade, I'm just going back over my circles with more circular lines. And if you've ever watched my coloring videos and blogs, you will know that I talk about the circular coloring rather extensively. Okay, anyway, so that's the idea behind the circular lines. Now, if I step that circular shading up, and you need to excuse me, I need to just check that I'm still recording, because honestly, it threw me for a loop when I recorded the whole video and it was just gone. Okay, so I'm going to take that circular shading and step it up a bit. So I'm again creating what I'm going to call the first layer. Now with this dark pencil, honestly, a first layer is very close to a finished layer. And then I'm going to bring my paper stump in, and I am going to shade that circular layer. Now look how soft this is. And then I can come in again and I can build up my dark areas. With more circular circles. And once I've got my second layer going, I come in with my paper stump yet again. And I blend it again. And you can see I maintain the circular movements even with the paper stump. And isn't that a lovely, absolutely gorgeous, soft blend? And when I've got the point of the paper stump all filled with graphite, I can even do my transitions, my softer transitions, easier with the paper stump than with a pencil. And whenever I pick this up, I want to go back to those because I can combine all of these with a paper stump. I'm not going to do that now because this is supposed to be a learning video, a teaching video. But if I'm developing drawings, then I can go to the hatching. Well, let me do it here because this one doesn't actually count anymore because I've messed up the video. If I blend my hatched lines with a paper stump, can you see that once again I get that softer blended area than where I've used only the lines, but at the same time there's still lines visible, so it's not the same as here where I've used the circular movements with a pencil. I'm never going to get the exact same results. So circular on circular and circular on line is not the same thing. The cross hatching, exactly the same thing, but again, even though blended with a paper stump, I still have a different pattern visible than I do here or here. So just to bear that in mind. Okay. Then I've got number 4 and 2. So 4 is the circular shading with a paper stump. And I'm going to go quick, really quick, because seriously. Okay, let me just do that. Okay, so circular with a paper stump. And then, for the sake, let me just do this transition better. For the sake of the texture, I then go to number 2, the cross hatching. And now I start developing my shaded areas with some cross hatching. Right, and then I can come in again with my paper stump and soften the cross hatching as well. And the transitions from one area to the next. So you can see, the more you know about shading, well, the greater all of this is going to turn out, isn't it? Then there's a method called stippling. And stippling literally is just putting down dots. And stippling takes a bit of time, so I'm probably not going to develop this fully now, but I will develop it to a point where you can actually understand the stippling method. But let me just say that whatever I'm going to do now, you need to do more dots than what I'm going to be doing. And so essentially, once you've got your shape, your shades filled in, you then go back to the areas that you want to be darkest and you lay down extra dots in those areas so that they will become a darker shade than the areas with fewer dots. Okay, so this is a rather great method of creating art, and when you combine stippling with the use of color, you can do optical, you can create optical colors, which means that, for instance, you do blue and yellow stipples. You don't use green at all, but the eye will visually see green because blue and green will create, blue and yellow will create a green, But even though you've never used green in your drawing, that's what the eye will perceive, drawing or painting. Now I can again come in with my paper stump and combine that with my stippling. And I'm still going to have the texture of the stippling, but it's going to fill in the white areas a little bit with a paper stump. So that's yet another method. Then we have, and this is the one that I almost forgot to include here. So let me do that one over here. Let me just find my pencil. And should we do it here at the bottom or at the top? Let me do it at the bottom. And this one is called Contour Hatching. My writing is atrocious here. So this time around, when I do my hatching, why did I do this at the bottom? It's difficult at the bottom. Oh my goodness, okay, never mind. I have. This time when I do my hatching, I'm going to follow, I'm not even in the lines. The book is bumpy and it's not easy to draw here, but okay. I'm going to follow let me do it differently. My lines are going to follow the shape, the contours of the shape. That's what I'm trying to say. And they don't have to go one directional or be one directional. They can cross each other, as in cross hatching, but they will remain rounded lines, not straight lines. And that's how you're going to build up your shade. Oh, let me just do this, because honestly I am messing up on this awkward spot. And again, you have the option, of course, as always, of coming in with your paper stump. But a contoured line is also going to be completely different in texture from a straight hatched line. So if you compare those two completely different things. And after that, a combination of all of these, any combination of all of these is going to keep improving your skill level. Now I'm going to just quickly take this out to talk about this. So you can see that my paper stump is now really, really dirty, which I can use in my favor, because if I had something, an area in a drawing that needed to be shaded really gently, really softly, I wouldn't pick up a pencil. I would pick up my paper stump and I would kind of work my paper stump to the tonal value that I want to put in there, because you can see this tonal value compared to that tonal value are two different things. And then I would shade with my paper stump. But if I don't want to do that, then I bring my paper stump to my I'm just pulling the point off there. Sandpaper block, and I am getting rid of the graphite by simply sanding it down. Okay, so what else have I been talking about in the first version of this video? I talked about tonal value. You need to understand the tonal value of your pencils. So this was actually done in a completely different video when I was unpacking these pencils after they'd arrived from Temu. And the pencils go from 2H to 8B. 2H, F, HB, B, and then all the way up to 8B. And that's the tonal value of the pencils. This is the same kind of pressure on all the pencils. But each pencil has a tonal value all its own. So over here, I've taken the B pencil, and starting with a very dark line, the tonal value of the B pencil goes from very light to that intensity of dark. And each of these pencils, this is the 2H. So let me write 2H. The 2H pencil is going to have a tonal value and all I do is I'm just lifting my hand. That's going to range from really light, and I can go even lighter, to dark, but not as intensely dark as your B. Now, if I go to, let me get a really, really dark one. That's the 6B. I want to get the darkest one. Here's your 8B. Here's my darkest pencil. So the tonal value on the 8B, if you compare this to the other two, my lightest area is never going to be as light as the other two in their lightest area. But my dark is going to be much darker than the other two. And this one is the 8B, so let me write it there. Just so you can compare for yourself how these would compare and the tonal value of each pencil. Now, honestly, you need to do this tonal value for each of your pencils. And that's kind of what I would advise that you do. Just a short tonal value for each of your pencils here, so that you have that to compare. Now, I also included in this parcel, let me just bring these things in here, so I remember to talk about them. Well, in the first place, a pencil eraser. And a pencil eraser you can use to erase completely. Okay? And that means that you can actually draw into an area. If I wanted to create patterns in an area, I would be able to do it with negative drawing into a dark area with my pencil eraser. I could do that, okay? Can you see that still in camera? But I can also use this pencil eraser to shade with. So instead of drawing, I am using it, instead of erasing, I'm using it to shade. And can you see how the color is being pulled in here? And how much more shaded this area is than the rest. And that's something you can do with your pencil eraser. I've also included the white pencil. Now, unlike what you would think, the white pencil is going to make no difference if you draw into any of these areas. It makes no difference. White pencil is included because it is a brilliant blending tool. Just look at how well a white pencil will blend. Fantastic. It's a fantastic blending tool. What else do I need to talk about? The black pencil. I haven't talked about the black pencil on this one. So the black pencil I have included because, where's my 8B pencil now? Here it is. My 8B is my darkest pencil in this set. And it goes really dark. But a black coloring pencil can always achieve, let me not say always, because I've had some really poor coloring pencils, but most of the time a black coloring pencil can achieve a much darker shade and shadow area than a graphite pencil, which is in essence always gray, and this is black, and that's the reason why we include a black pencil. Now, on the previous video, I have also tested the two over each other, so let me do it here. The graphite pencil over the coloring pencil works brilliantly. The coloring pencil over the graphite pencil works brilliantly, and that means that these two can be used in conjunction with each other without a problem. Okay, so I think in essence that was the idea, the concept behind the previous video. Let me quickly show you what I mean by doing this. I have the 8B here, so let me do this. I would essentially take my 8B pencil and just do a tonal value on a rather small scale. And write there 8B, so that I know that's the tonal value of my 8B pencil. I would then do the same thing next to it with my 7B pencil. Just do a tonal value of a 7B pencil. And so on with all the pencils. I'm not going to do that. Okay, there was quite a bit actually that I've done on the other video that I forgot to do now. So on top of all of that was just shading and value scale. Okay, I also showed that I have included these in the parcel. So let me start with these ones at the bottom now. Now, when we are drawing, when we learn to draw, when we're taught to draw, we are taught to draw like this, like shapes. And we're all very happy when we can achieve this. But in art, and especially when you want to start painting and things, you actually don't want those outlines. None of these pictures have a dark outline. In nature, those don't exist. What we actually see are planes. And that's why I have printed these examples for everyone. Everyone gets 2 sheets of these. And some of them a little bit more intricate, like these grapes, and some a little bit more simple, like the oranges, the apples, and so forth. Any case. So the idea is to write on top of these, and let me now use this orange because I've already used the apple. No, let me do this. You are going to draw the planes that you see. And these are going to be more angular shapes. I probably see another one. Okay. And that's just going to give you more of an impression of the actual shape that you're working with. And once you've got the planes marked, you can see that this plane here is very dark. This plane here is very light. And you can start filling in your shading according to what you actually physically see and how the light bounces off your shade, off your planes, rather. Okay, so that's the one thing. And that then talks about the tonal difference in the reds here, and the tonal difference that you can create with your pencils. Okay. The other thing that I really wanted to point out is that you need to go dark, really dark in some areas. And so if you have, well, let's talk about this first. When you start drawing, do yourself a favor and just start drawing shapes. And when you start drawing your shapes, you want to start filling in your shapes and sort of think, okay, my light source is going to be here. So all of this is going to be very light. Probably that still is light, with all this being a little darker. And this area here, that Okay, so this is my, called the center light. And these are going to be my halftones. This point here, this is the terminator. Everything on this side is no longer affected by the direct light, the center light. But it is still visible. And let's talk about that. So this is going to be my darkest areas. And don't be scared to go dark. This is what we're trying to say. But these areas here, they exist to the eye. There's not a gap there. They exist to the eye because there is reflected light bouncing off something that's not even in our drawing. So this light bounces off something there which reflects upon this, which means this is visible. If there's no light, it's not visible. It stops existing. It's not. It doesn't come. If there's no light, we can't see it. Then it doesn't exist to us. Okay, but we can see it, even though it's really dark. We can see it because of the reflected light. And there, in those shadow areas, never be scared to go really, really dark. Once you develop your transitions and your differences between light and dark, you are going to start, your drawings will come to life. I just need to sharpen that. Okay. It's a poor drawing, isn't it? Okay, never mind. What else do I need to say? Just this. When you are now, the reason that I printed this for the people attending the course is so that you can work directly on this and create your planes on this, draw on this. You don't have to redraw anything, but do this. And then start tracing the shapes and sort of see, if you were to draw this apple, how would you go about it? That's the shape of an apple. If I were to draw a mango, how would I go about it? And you start drawing the shape of a mango, noticing that there's a shadow area under it. There's a shadow area under the leaf. And just noticing, by spending time on a picture, instead of just glancing at it and walking away because you go, oh, I know, that's an orange. That's the knowledge you take away from it. When you spend time on an orange and you trace its outline and you attach the stalk and you go, but that area there is darker. Hang on, there's this little circle here that I've never paid any attention to. There's a light area here which is much lighter than this side, so my light source comes from the here. This area here, this is darker than this area here and this area here, and you're just sort of starting to make sense. There's a mid-tone there, there's a mid-tone there. Those two I think are pretty much the same, although I think that one's slightly darker. There's a shadow area here under the leaf. There's a shadow area here under the leaf. There's a shadow area here under the orange, and that grounds the orange, so it's not just floating in space. Look at the cherries. The cherries are floating in space. The orange is on a surface. We might not see the surface, but there's a surface present. There's a surface suggested. Same with the word has just left my mind. Afrikaans is granaat. Gone. Okay, anyways. And that's how you are going to spend time with objects. And it doesn't have to be only the object. You're going to also now start seeing the texture of the orange. You're going to start seeing how the texture of the lemon differs from the texture of the orange. How it differs from the texture here, and this thing that I still can't find a word for. And the cherry, and how the pip and the cherry, the flesh of the cherry differs, and so on and so forth. And then you can start spending time on other areas in a drawing. This is some sort of wooden surface that this apple is sitting on. And just start making sense of things just by spending time on it. Okay, you also want to do the same thing with these coloring pages that I've given you. Now, I have deliberately included these, and there was supposed to be 2 sheets, but there's going to be an overlap sheet because I made a printing error, and then I thought, well, it's already printed, throw in a third one. It's a little bit more practice. You're going to start by, and I've already started on this in the previous video, you're going to start shading these fruits, and I would advise that you start on the ones that's already been started for you. Can you see this one has a bit of shading already? And you're going to follow those lines, and you're going to learn something about shading, and then you're going to develop it a little bit further, because this is not fully developed. I deliberately didn't include any fully developed shaded examples. You're going to look at how shade is affected in all of these. And once you've learned something, let's say you've been working on this apple here, and once you've learned something from this apple, you're going to go to those apples which are not nearly as developed as this one is. And you're going to take this knowledge and you're going to apply it to those ones there. And I'm not sure that they're in the video. So you're going to apply your knowledge from there to here, and you're going to start applying the rules that you've learned here and applying it there. There's some stippling in here. You might want to include some stippling in here, etc., etc. And you are again going to trace shapes. Let me work on this. You're going to trace shapes so that you can start building up a muscle memory to know how things are put together, how they are created, and become familiar with shapes. And that's the idea behind these pictures. And when we start creating our actual paintings, drawings in our book, we will be using these as references as well. But I want to show you that working on these are actually printed to be worksheets, that you can work on them and develop on them. And that's the purpose behind these. I have not talked about this one yet, and I do want to talk about this one. I have now talked you through a couple of ideas concerning lines and focal points and patterns. And now when you go to this, you can start seeing patterns and lines being used to create with. At first glance, this is a nothing. But when you start looking at this now, can you see a face starting to take shape? When an artist deliberately makes a wider line, deliberately puts a black in between 2 whites, deliberately includes certain colors and certain contour lines to create certain shapes. Very clever. Creating a focal point with color. Creating a focal point with line. And the depth that's created in this one is astounding. Just using contour lines to create a shape. Using all sorts of lines. This is such a mishmash of lines. But still the control to have a shape pop out of this mishmash of lines. Cleverly done. A whole landscape with lines. And your focal point with everything going in one direction, pointing at that lightest area on the page. And see how the darks and the lights are contrasted. This one here, again, very cleverly done. Very cleverly done. Love this little one. This one is also extremely clever. These are really just kind of like Van Gogh's, Van Gogh's type of lines and colors that's being used here. And then this shape emerging with a clever use of lines and color. And the repetition of shapes here, certainly using something like a fish Can you see the fish, the eyes and the mouth? And it's just really wavy lines that's been used to create this repeating pattern. But yeah, it's important to have references like this that you can refer to and just be inspired by. Okay, so that's our introduction to the course. And that's where I'm going to leave it off for the sake of this video. We still need to actually create the art. We've got to talk about the art therapy aspect of this one as well. But I'm going to leave that for another video and just sort of say cheers for now. And I will see you in the next video.